Welcome to this mini lecture on research versus design. It is a mini lecture about the differences in approaches and outcomes between research and design, and therefore between different scientific disciplines. And that's highly relevant as it also relates to your own professional identity. The grand challenges that we face, the large real-world problems, typically relate to multiple domains. And those domains are covered by different disciplines. Look at the figure. On the top left we see the material world, typically studied by data sciences or engineering sciences. They try to understand the material world and they do so by aiming for objectivity. On the top right you see our social world, where people interact. It's about groups of people, our economy, our society, the rules and regulations and how we make decisions. And that's very much context dependent, depending on the stakeholders involved, the culture, the time and the place where actions take place. So that requires a completely different approach of conducting science. And then on the bottom part you see the personal world, people with their emotions as studied by psychology. Now, if you have all those different domains and different disciplinary approaches, that comes with different worldviews and views of what's good science. We have different disciplines, different analytical lenses, and how to bring them together in a constructive way so that it works and that we can build on solutions. Well, first of all, it requires awareness and reflexivity of the assumptions that you have, as well as the assumptions and the implicit analytical lens that's there in literature or in specific approaches. And it's very important to raise that awareness, because there can be major differences between disciplines. I already discussed a little bit on the difference between natural sciences and the social sciences. And another clear distinction is between the research approach and the design approach. Sometimes that also relates to disciplines. A theoretical physicist might relate to the research approach. An architect or an industrial designer might relate to the design approach. But it also very much depends on the type of activities that we do as academics. Sometimes we engage in research and sometimes we engage more in design approaches. Let me clarify that distinction a bit more in detail. Here you see the normal research cycle. First, you do observations in order to gather data. And once you've got a lot of data, you might see certain patterns. And you might try to explain that by theory formation. Theories that explain what's going on or that explain cause and effect relationships. And once you have a strong theory, you can draw a hypothesis from that you can test in order to see whether your theory is valid or not, or whether it needs adaptation. So the key focus in the research cycle is at knowledge and theory generation. That's the key result. We do so by observation afterwards. And it tries to be a value-free process. So the observer should not influence the measurements by any way. Often the focus is on a single aspect. We single it out in order to get rid of all sort of other influences and to really understand what's going on in that small part that we want to research. Now, it's a cycle because there can be multiple starting points and it's an iterative process. A researcher often goes to multiple cycles of the research in order to end up with strong theory and good results. Another approach is the design cycle. The design cycle starts by exploration of needs or problems of stakeholders or society and analyzes that. Once you know what the problem structure is, you can think of possible solutions and how to bring that together, to synthesize different aspects in order to have something that works and solves your problem. And once you have that idea, you can work on realizing that in a prototype or when the prototype is approved in a real artifact. As such, the aim is not so much on theory or knowledge, but the aim is at changing the world, realizing a product, executing a plan, something that was not there before. In that process, you build on different skill sets, reasoning, creativity, insight, and all that is led by values from the people that have a problem and that want solutions. So solutions can not only be derived based on problem understanding or knowledge creation. And the aim is at the totality, it's a holistic approach. You need to have a whole solution and not just identify or understand a single aspect of it. And just as in the research cycle, the design cycle is an iterative process where you have multiple starting points, multiple feedback loops, and that you can run through multiple times in order to achieve the best possible product. Now, Moti wrote a book about design thinking, and that central argument is that design is not just something for architects, but it's a more general approach. You can also apply it in scenario building or designing policies or management strategies and business models. So it's applicable to a much broader category of problems. And some of the characteristics he sees in design thinking is it's an approach to collective problem solving, a framework to balance needs and feasibilities, a means to solve complex or wicked problems, a mindset for curiosity and inquiry, a way to take on design challenges by applying empathy, a design buzzword to suggest that the designer can do more than just design, a problem-solving approach to handle problems on a systems level, a culture that fosters exploration and experimentation. Another approach is the design science research. In the figure you see on the left the environment where you explore the problem setting, and that leads to identifying what the problem is and what you want to do about it. On the right hand side you see the knowledge base, the foundation, the theory, the knowledge that's available in the different disciplines. And you bring that together in your approach in order to develop theories and artifacts. So now I introduced the differences between the research cycle and the design approach. And it might be that you personally or the educational program that you follow relates more to either the research cycle or the design approach. That's part of your professional identity. Are you aware of that? Do you feel yourself more a natural scientist or a social scientist? More a researcher or designer?